Well, at the end of this summer that just ended, I guess, our family enjoyed what for our family I think was a trip of a lifetime. We had a vacation like we don't normally have, but Sandra's employer had indicated that her vacation allotment is decreasing. So it was now or never. So ever since we adopted our son Darren from the country of Georgia as a 4.5-month-old infant, we've always intended, or at least I've always intended, to bring him back someday to see his homeland when he could be old enough to remember it and appreciate it, and also be young enough that they won't maybe think that he should join the military. So we wanted to be in that window. And so this year, I guess, partly by the threat of no more long vacation, that day finally came. So we went on a really enjoyable trip. We first flew to the capital of Georgia, not Georgia in the United States, but Georgia the country, to Tbilisi, which is the capital, which is right there, kind of in the middle of the country. This is a section of the country that belongs to the country, South Ossetia, but they don't really want to belong to the country, so they're a breakaway region. And this one over here, Abkhazia, is also a breakaway region. Don't really want to belong to Russia, don't want to belong to Georgia, want to be in charge of themselves, but would really like these other countries to give them help, which is kind of an interesting thing. And Russia does come in and give some help, or some might when need be. So we flew there by way of Istanbul, Turkey, so now I can say I've been in Turkey for a couple of hours in the airport, and we spent 10 really enjoyable days in Sakartvelo. Now, what is Sakartvelo? Does anybody know? See, Georgia is the Western name, the kind of the official legal name of the country, but Sakartvelo is the native Georgian name for the people and the nation. True Georgians really think of their country as Sakartvelo. Yeah, it's Georgia, but really at their heart, it's Sakartvelo. So to illustrate that, when we flew from Turkey to Tbilisi, on our flight was what looked like maybe a high school Georgian basketball team, because they seemed kind of tall, and I don't know, Darren said they were a high school team, so we're going with that. But when they got off the plane and got all of their luggage and they gathered together as a team before they were going to, I guess, go their separate ways to their homes, they gave a little team cheer, and they didn't say, "Yeah, Georgia." They said, "Sakartvelo," and then off they went. So we spent some time in Georgia, or Sakartvelo. We spent some time in Tbilisi, which is here in this province or area. These aren't really provinces, but areas. We spent a little bit of time north here a bit along the Aravgi River. If you really like Georgian food, there is an authentic Georgian restaurant in Vaughan called the Aravgi Restaurant. So next time I go in there, I'm going to tell them, you know what? I was half a mile from the Aravgi River, the real thing. And maybe they'll give me a discount. Although I've been in there before, they're not going to give me a discount, but I'll still try it. They'll just say, "Oh, that's very nice." And then we also took a train, and we traveled through a fair bit of the country. We traveled all the way up here to Sakartvelo, to this city here, Zugdidi, which is close to the breakaway region. And so that province or area is called Sakartvelo or Mingrelia. And see, Darren is a Mingrelian. That's where he comes from. And according to the elderly mother of the adoption lady when we adopted him, when we were finalizing things right before we left, and she saw his official papers, she saw a document that had the maiden name of his birth mother. And this elderly lady was like, "Oh, wow, look at that. Wow, what a name." So apparently, according to her, that name was the name of an ancient Mingrelian royal family. So she's like, "Oh, he probably comes from royalty." And then the poor kid just became a Godsoe. Just smacked right back down to a normal life reality. No royalty here, except in the kingdom of God, right? So we took the opportunity to go up there and see more of the country. Last time we were just filling out documents, kind of stuck in an apartment. This time we saw some more. In Tbilisi, we were privileged to stay in a building that houses one of the 3 Adventist congregations in Tbilisi. That particular one is a predominantly Russian-speaking congregation. Their services are in Russian. It's also the congregation we worshiped in when we visited to adopt Darren. It's the congregation I had a chance to preach for as I tried to formulate a Georgian sentence just to find out that their service is in Russian. Also, the building we stayed in houses the headquarters of the Georgian Mission on one side, their offices, and on the other side of the building, it has the offices of the Trans-Caucasus Union Mission. So it's a church headquarters. It also is a place where they have a little studio for the Georgian, I don't know if it's Adventist World Radio or Georgian Adventist Radio programming takes place there. As well, on the top of the building, they've built apartments where students from the Zayatsky Seminary in Russia come to do some of their practical training. So they'll come for a month or two and do part of their training there. So it's quite a large building. We were actually staying in the apartment where the Union president lived. He split his time between Tbilisi and Germany, where his home really was, but he was just transitioning out of that job. And the offices of the mission and the offices of the Union Mission were closed for vacation for August, so it worked out really nice. We got to stay in that apartment while we were there. And while we were there, we were blessed to meet this young adult lady at the church office building where we stayed. Her name is Irina Metsoyan. She is from Georgia, of Armenian background. And she was our hostess. She lived part-time in the apartment beside us. She had another place where she lived as well, but she volunteers to take care of the apartments and kind of take care of the building when no one is around. She is studying to become a teacher. What a pleasant, friendly, helpful young lady she was, sister in Christ. In fact, she became our official tour guide. You can meet her here for a little bit.
Here's Irina. She's our tour guide.
And she lives right beside us.
And there.
She wasn't our official tour guide. We just made her our tour guide. She was very kind. Every day, she would just be available to us for whatever we wanted to see. So every day, if we wanted to go out and see some sights or go shopping, or if we needed to go buy train tickets or whatever it is we needed, she would go around with us, spent the day with us, and helped us out very much. Helped negotiate the metro system, the buses, the marshrukas, which are the little yellow minivan-like buses. She helped communicate with the store personnel and the taxis, who are really mean, and most of them. And in the restaurants, she would help speak for us, because it helps when you speak the language, right? That way we weren't getting taken advantage of as North American tourists with so much money we didn't know what to do with it. We should just hand it all over. She could kind of help temper that a little bit. So it was a blessing to meet her. Frankly, we saw far, far more of Tbilisi than we would have ever come close to seeing on our own. So we visited museums and parks and markets for shopping, and several Orthodox churches. They build big churches, not churches to come really worship in like we're doing, but churches to come in, light a few candles, maybe give an offering, go and kiss the pictures of some saints or some holy relic, put in a few moments, kiss the building on the way out, good to go. Your religion is on board. So these large churches, not made for sitting in, but for these kind of ceremonies and procedures. Saw a lot of them. We explored an ancient fortress, climbed all over it. We rode at night on this huge Ferris wheel all lit up on the top of a mountain overlooking the city. Did a lot of fun things over there. The escalator, sometimes down to the metro, you would ride over 2 minutes just straight down. It was so deep in the ground. I've never been on an escalator like that. These are Turkish baths in the old part of Tbilisi. These are, I don't know, some of the local natives that we found dancing. Or maybe that's my family. Anyways, those are that's a statue for the traditional Georgian dancers. That is their pride and joy. That is their biggest church. That is the head church of the Georgian Orthodox religion. The thing is huge. You have to be up to it to appreciate how big it is. And I wasn't allowed in because I wasn't wearing long pants. So I wasn't in a appropriate enough attire, apparently, to go in. Although they do have a store right there selling stuff at the door, so I found that kind of an interesting situation. That thing's all lit up at night. It's really beautiful. Inside some of the churches, this ancient fortress that used to overlook the old city when people needed to be safe from invaders. They're not invaders. Probably not. We even crawled through some little tunnels and looked out over precipices, long ways down. A lot of fun. So she helped us out a lot. And what did we do for Irina? What did we do in return for her? Well, here we are in Tbilisi, in Liberty Square. We got a Dunkin' Donuts.
American food.
Canadian food.
Up there.
Food.
And show in there. Show in there too. Show in Darren. Show in there.
Okay.
Actually ate Dunkin' Donuts in Tbilisi. Irina had her first donut ever in her life.
Yeah. My first donut.
First donut. All right, everybody has to have a first donut at some point. That poor girl had never had a donut before. How can you meet a Canadian and not have a donut? We also introduced her to her first visit to McDonald's in Tbilisi. But don't worry lest you think all we did was go over there to eat North American fast food. We really didn't that much. We enjoyed a lot of delicious Georgian food. We enjoyed some wonderful hachapuri and some pakali and some kinkali. Now, Pastor Robert, do you even know what those are? He's just up there going, he's obviously hungry. All right. And we got good at riding the TTC, not the Toronto Transit Commission, but the Tbilisi Transport Company. And about as fast, but way louder. You know, when I came back and rode the TTC a couple of weeks ago, I was like, wow, it's so quiet. So deathly quiet. It's kind of nice. So we enjoyed that. You know, it's always interesting to visit another part of the world, right? I think there's probably nothing that can help you better appreciate home like spending a little bit of time away from it. Because as much as we enjoyed our trip, I was happy to come home, happy to be in Canada, happy to stay on this continent. It's kind of like I know how things work and I speak the language. Drivers are crazy in Georgia. They are crazy. Even some of our wildest drivers here in Toronto, they're like average drivers in Georgia. So they have a saying there. The saying goes like this. Their saying is, the pedestrian is always right, but the pedestrian is not always alive. And that is the truth. So you can have all the rights in the world, but if you would like to see tomorrow, you better just step back and pay attention, and when you need to run and cross the street, you run and cross the street, and don't be none of this Canadian attitude like you're just going to stop for me because you'll be dead. So and I thought, this is good for me to be over there. I thought, being there for 10 days, experiencing Georgian driving, some of the annoying and obnoxious drivers that I encounter here in Toronto, I thought when I get back, it's good. It'll give me some perspective. It won't bother me anymore. That only lasted about a day. And those brainless buffoons still drive me crazy. It's interesting in different countries how they see things, right? People see things different ways. We were at this great big park. It was a park and a big amusement park up at the top of this mountain. It was very interesting. Lavelle was considered old enough and tall enough and big enough to drive a bumper car. Drive around smashing people. But she wasn't considered big enough and old enough to go on those rides, a little ride like the log thing, you go up and it goes down and splashes into the water. They're like, oh no, she can't go on that. She's too small. It's not safe. It's not safe. And I thought, I don't know about that because in my opinion, the bus ride up and down the mountain on these old Soviet-era buses belching out exhaust, people crammed in there, so you're stuffed out the windows. You've got the driver, he's on his cell phone, he's smoking, he's careening down hairpin turns up and down. Somehow that's safe. But I wouldn't want your daughter to go on this little ride because that could not be safe. No, our life was in our hands on the bus. So it's interesting that different people see things different ways. But for me, the hands-down highlight of the whole trip was being able to visit the town of Kobe, as we've always called it, or as we learned, what it's really called, Kobe. 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 Something like that. It works better when you have a cold. Kobe. Because that is where Darren was born. And this is us in the center of Hobie. It had been hot, hadn't rained for over a month there in Sakartvelo in Mingrelia. It was impressively hot. The day we went to see all these sites, toured around, it was raining. So it was kind of nice because it was cool, but it was kind of not nice because it was raining. But I was so excited to be in Hobie, about 10 kilometers south of Zugdidi. Zugdidi is the major center in Mingrelia or Sakartvelo. And we couldn't go there before. When Darren was born, it wasn't even a feasible thing to think about trying to go up to Zugdidi because it's just a kilometer or two from Abkhazia. There was war happening, a lot of unrest, a lot of shady things going on, so it was not safe to go there. And we were kind of not even sure if we should venture up to those parts on this trip, but I'm sure glad we did. It was a lot of fun. Kobe is not far from the Black Sea. It has a very temperate climate. So there's palm trees growing there. You've got a lot of corn growing there, hazelnuts, tea, and citrus fruits. And for me, it was just cool to finally see, which I didn't think I would ever see, where my kid came from. Here's the Hobie sign. Hobie sign. Darren was born. Kobe, unfortunately, it's raining. The Kobe Hospital. That's the old hospital where Darren probably wasn't born because it looks like it hasn't been used for a long time. And this is the new hospital. This is the Kobe Hospital. So this is probably where Darren was born, I think. I'm pretty sure this would have been where he would have been born. So this is pretty cool to see where Darren was born. Here comes the cow to say hello. Hello, cow. Okay. Yeah, so when's the last time you saw a cow wandering by North York General Hospital? Not so likely, right? There's a lot of cows in Mingrelia. I mean, they're everywhere. And why is that? Is it like India? Are they sacred or revered or holy? No. They are just very much appreciated and respected because the Mingrelians make a special kind of cheese, which is absolutely amazingly good on Hachapuri, Mingrelian Hachapuri. And so they like cows because they like the milk and the cream every day to make this special cheese. So the cows get to do whatever they want. The cows wander around. If cows want to be in your yard, cows are in your yard. We got on the train in Zugdidi, we walk out into the main square, and there's a cow eating in the middle of the boulevard. And if they stand on the road, you just find a way around them. You don't mess with the cows. They like the cows. So it was kind of interesting to have a cow walk by the hospital. I appreciated him coming right at that time for the video. So after we left Georgia, we went to Greece, and there was a bunch of things I tried to tell the people this morning about that, but I'm not going to tell you because then I missed out saying some other important things that I'd rather say. So I'm just going to leave some of those stories. But I do want to do one thing that I promised I would do, and that is bring you greetings as a congregation from a couple of pastors. First of all, Pastor Adrian, or A.J. Ferns, who is the pastor of the International Adventist Congregation in Athens. He's actually a Filipino man, was a pastor in Israel, and now for the last few years has been a pastor in Athens. And we needed to pick something up from him for some friends, and he kind of rescued us from the bus station when it closed unexpectedly and made it possible for us to make it to the airport to come back home. So greetings from him. And also greetings from this pastor and his family. This is Pastor Grisha Samalashvili. I did that better than this morning. Greetings from him. Those are his two daughters and his wife. His son was at home with his friends, as he said, hopefully not burning down the house for Sabbath. They were having their own Sabbath afternoon dinner. So greetings from him and from the members of his congregation in Tbilisi, the Philadelphia Seventh-day Adventist congregation. And here's a picture of them who we worshiped with. That's part of them, and that's their church. It's on an upper level of a building, and that's the other side. And that man there was the man who preached that day. He's the guy that does the Adventist Georgian radio, and there's the pastor there. And there's some people back there we know. All right, so that was the congregation. So they've asked, and they asked again that I give greetings to you. So I want to get to this Sakartvelo story, because I want to tell you a story. But to tell you that story, I need to first begin with this story. Or not story, but this experience. So since Darren and many of his friends and classmates are big time into playing and following soccer, when we were there in Georgia, we thought that it would be kind of a good idea, and he wanted this, to get a souvenir that would be like maybe a soccer jersey or a soccer outfit from a Georgian team or something like that, right? We thought that would be something neat. Not too many people probably have that. So we thought, let's get that as a souvenir that he could enjoy and wear. And so we looked a little bit, in kind of the tourist areas, and we looked at the uniforms for the Tbilisi Dynamo team, which is their best professional team, but they were really expensive. By the way, I forgot to have my family come up here. Sorry. Oh, my wife is saying, yeah, what's wrong with you? There's lots of things wrong with me. All right. Yeah, so when you're there, you want to get some stuff. So this isn't a soccer uniform, but Darren and I, oh, yes. So last week I wore a chiplo. You know what these are called? Probably vests, I guess. I really don't know what they call them. I'm sure they have a name. So we have kind of these traditional vests, and Sandra has a traditional scarf. I don't know what makes it traditional, but I forget. There's something special about it. And Lavelle wanted a dress. And the only dress that fit her, the place we were at, was this dancing. This is like the traditional dancing costume. And we're like, really? I'm like, you're going to wear this dress to church? Because I'm not buying this dress for it just to sit in your closet. She's like, oh yeah, I'll wear it to church. More than once. So if we had only waited till the end of the day where we found all the rest of our stuff, there was more like normal dresses we could have bought. So when you see Lavelle wearing this in the weeks to come, just smile and say Happy Sabbath. Don't worry if she looks a little flashy. All right. Thank you, family. Thank you. But we wanted to get a soccer thing too. So we were looking for this stuff, and I had read that there were some sports stores near the stadium where Tbilisi Dynamo plays. So I thought maybe if we go there, I can get something a little more reasonable. So on Friday, we decided to check it out. So we found the stadium. This is where the Tbilisi Dynamo team plays. It's also where the Georgian national soccer team plays, and it's also where the Georgian national rugby team plays. And the rugby team does a lot better on the world stage than the soccer team does. And this stadium is named after this guy, Boris Pachadze, who apparently was their greatest player at some time in the distant past. He's actually the one in the middle of those three there. So it was kind of, neat to see that, and we got to see the stadium. You go up to the bars and look in and take a picture, and it's kind of cool to see the big stadium. And then at one point, a man came out of the gate, and Irina asked him if we would be allowed to go inside. But he just kind of ignored her. So we took that as a no, and we stayed outside. But we did find a sports store nearby, and we were able to get some shirts that indicate that the wearers are fans of the Georgian national team, which we thought was pretty cool. Because how many of you have one of these? So we got one for Darren, and on the back it says something like, I'm a follower, or I'm a fan of the Georgian national team. Or maybe it says something else, I don't know, but it's in Georgian, but I think that's what it says. And we got one for Lavelle, and she has shorts to go with hers, so we thought, that's cool. We were pretty happy. We were pretty, just like the colors of the Georgian flag kind of incorporated into the shirt. Kind of cool. So we were happy. We were like, okay, we've accomplished what we wanted to do. We have a nice little soccer souvenir that we can take home. It'll be different from what anybody else has. It's good to remember our trip there. So we were good with that. We were satisfied. So the next day, we decided to attend church with Irina in the congregation that she goes to, which is the Philadelphia congregation I showed to you before. They're one of two, actually, Georgian-speaking congregations in the city. So, last time I was in Georgia, right close to Sabbath, they asked if I would preach. So I thought, I'm going to be smart this time. I brought a sermon with me this time. I'm like, they asked me to preach? No problem, I got a sermon. You know what happened? I got there, and right before Sabbath, they asked me if I would tell a mission story from Canada. I'm like, what? A mission story? So I am so thankful that Willowdale went to PEI, and I'm thankful that all those pictures were available online, because, man, I gave a mission story. I had so many pictures. I amazed myself. So I told them about our congregation. I showed them, I can really have pictures of all of you, but I gave greetings, and it was kind of nice to be able to do that. After church, a family invited us and Arena to their home for lunch. It turns out this family lives in a very nice apartment in Tbilisi. It's about the size of what normally 3 families would live in. So very big. They have like a whole half of one floor of a whole apartment building. Very nice family. And let me introduce to you the host.
Say your name for the video. Say your name.
I'm Mate Gunianidze.
Mate Gunianidze.
All right, I still can't say his name. This man, Mate Gunianidze, is a professional soccer player who just retired 1 year ago at the age of 27. And he's a fairly new Seventh-day Adventist Christian. So can you imagine how cool this was? This was a pretty big deal, especially for Darren, or maybe more for me. I'm not sure who was more excited. But here we are in the home of an actual professional soccer player. Not someone who was a soccer player like 25 years ago, walking around with a walker, but like a professional soccer player. I thought that was pretty cool. I don't follow the sport of soccer. You name the teams, I don't know who really matters. You name the famous players, I don't really know who they are. I don't really care. But I do know this, that as we were talking with Mate, and he was mentioning some of the teams they had played against, and some of the players he had played with, and some of the players he had played against, I do know that Dallin's eyes were getting bigger and bigger, and the look of awe upon his face was getting stronger. Because at first I think he thought, well, this guy's not really a soccer player. But then when he heard some of the people he played with, he was like, whoa, this is really a soccer player. And he wasn't just some obscure professional soccer player. He actually was a professional soccer player. He played first for Russia in Lokomotiv. Then he played for a professional team in Munich. And lastly, he played for a professional team in Ukraine. And these are just some pictures off the internet of him playing. And he also played for the Georgian national team. But what was really amazing was that as we were there and they were getting dinner ready, he brought out one of his actual soccer uniforms from playing on the national team. That was pretty cool to see. And then, to our shocked surprise, he gave the uniform to Darren. Gave it to him. We couldn't believe it. So here we are the day before, searching around in stores, trying to get a little shirt that says, I'm a fan of the national team, to buy as a souvenir. And now Darren has an authentic, actual national team uniform worn by an actual member of the team, worn in actual games, including the socks. I thought that was pretty cool. Now, it's a bit big for him, right? Because Mate is an adult and Darren isn't, but who cares, man? Yeah, it's pretty cool. Now, do you think it's easy? Are you there, Darren? Not yet? There he is. Now, do you think it's easy to put this thing on? Let me show you just a little bit. We're going to cut this down, but let me just show you a little bit of the reality of how hard it is to be dressed and how much skill you need as a professional.
From a professional, how to put on his soccer
So when you
socks.
get to this point, this.
Here, Darren is learning how to get dressed. I don't know, Darren. He was a lot quicker than you were.
Well, he also did this one time. And my socks go into here.
He did it well.
All right.
Not easy.
Oh.
Here. Ik doe dat niet gaat niet.
Oh my.
There. And then it goes on because he needed help with the other one as well. But how many people get to have a professional soccer player put on your uniform for you? That's pretty cool, right? All right. Thank you, Darren. It looks pretty good. Getting better at it. Later in the week, we went to visit Mate and his wife, Mari, and their little one-year-old daughter, Sarah, in their country home, which is a little ways north of Tbilisi. And that home was even more impressive than their apartment. We ended up staying in their home overnight. We became better acquainted with them, better acquainted with Mate's mother, Tina, and with his sister and some of the other church members who came to visit. So it was kind of cool to be with someone like that. I have some video that I won't show you of Mate and Mary and Darren and Lavelle playing soccer with a beach ball in their house. Kind of cool to play soccer with a professional. The night before, we were playing tag out in their courtyard. They have all these trees and courtyard, and we were playing tag, and I was huffing and puffing and trying to catch the kids. And then Mate decided to play. And so Darren started running, and Mate started running, and like in 3 seconds, it was just like, whoop. The guy is really fast, really fast. So it was interesting to meet him. But you know what? What was far more amazing to me than the fact that we were hanging out with a recently retired professional soccer player and his family was the testimony and the story of how he became a Seventh-day Adventist Christian. That was really the most amazing thing. And his story becomes connected with the stories of others. And I found those stories intriguing, inspiring, and instructive. And so I want to very briefly try to share, I'm not going to be able to share these stories, but I'm going to share a little bit of the stories with you. It's never the same hearing a testimony secondhand, right? It's best to hear it from the person, him or herself. But I hope by God's grace you will be blessed and challenged and encouraged by some stories. Let me just let these people introduce themselves. Whoops, did we miss that?
From a professional. Gamarjoba to everybody.
Gamarjoba.
Okay.
That's Mate,
Hello.
Mari, and their mom Tina.
There's a good smile. Okay. Oh, Gamarjoba to the people in Toronto.
Pastor's family.
All right. This is the pastor's family at the church we went to in Georgia.
2, 3, here we go. And 1, 2, 3, go.
Okay, now wait, you need to say hello. Okay, we're gonna start here. You need to say Gamarjoba, my name is.
Gamarjoba, my name is Darren.
Okay.
Gamarjoba, my name is Ala.
Allah?
Godsoe, my name is Helen.
Helen? Ellen? Helen.
Godsoe, my names are Irma and Helen.
And Ellen. And Gamarjoba, my name is Sarah. Sarah. And how about this person down here?
Gamarjoba, my name is Ala.
Gamarjoba, my name is Mate.
Mate.
Godsoe, my name is Mari.
Mari.
Godsoe, my name is Tina.
Tina. And this is mom here. All right. Hello to Toronto. Okay.
All right. I'm not going to be able to tell you all their stories, but just you can have a chance to meet some of the people from the congregation there. Tell you a little bit about Mate's story. Started playing professional soccer when he was 17 years old. By the time he was 19, he was the most valuable player. By the time he was 21, he was captain of the national team, the defender. He was a good soccer player. He played for Russia in Lokomotiv, then in Munich, then in Ukraine. And you know, there's always a big rivalry between the Georgian national team and the Russian national team. And you know who always wins? The Russian national team. Because they're a big country, lots of people, strong team. But after their little war there, their 7-8 day war in 2008, the next game that they were going to play between those two national teams had a lot of emotional national pride riding on it. And even though Mate was young, they called him up. The coach of the Georgian national team called him up to join the national team to play in this big game. And you know what happened? Something happened that never happened. Georgia won 2-0. I see you're excited. I was pretty excited. That was pretty good for them after, Russia came down with their tanks and basically said, don't ever bother us again. I'm actually like, don't ever try to take your own land again or we're going to beat you up. It was kind of nice that they beat them in soccer, I think. So Mate retired at age 27. How come? He has 4 older sisters. His eldest sister, who you saw there, the lady waving, holding little baby Sarah, she became an Adventist 12 years ago. And when she did, it wasn't a happy time in their family because her father good Georgian Orthodox man. For the Georgians, it was the second country in the world to be a Christian country, but it's an Orthodox. It's really a national religion. It's as much about your country as it is about God. And so it's not looked on kindly when you choose to step aside from the Georgian Orthodox Church. And so the father was very angry. He didn't like it. And he told his daughter that if this is what you are going to do, then you are no longer a part of this family. You're no longer welcome in this family. And you no longer will live in this home. So you can leave because you have abandoned the family. That was difficult, as you can imagine, for her. She actually ended up living on her own for a little bit and then moved in with Doug and Tanya Hart. Doug was the conference treasurer, and they invited her into their home. And she was able to help care for their daughter. But when her father was giving her so much grief, Mate was a young, fairly new professional soccer player in Russia. And he stood up for his older sister, his oldest sister. And when he found out what was going on, he was a young professional, and he told his parents, he said, if my sister is not welcome in your home, and if my sister is not welcome as a part of your family, and if my sister is not welcome to attend family gatherings, then I will assume that I also am not welcome to attend family gatherings, so I won't be attending. And he said, if my sister is not welcome in your home, then you are not welcome in my home. So he took a pretty big stand as a young single man against his parents. But it, I think, shows that he had something in his heart for the decisions that his sister had made. And what she did is she faithfully prayed for her family. And not just her, she got that congregation, that Philadelphia congregation in Tbilisi, to faithfully, regularly pray for her family. Her 3 younger sisters, her younger brother, her father, her mother. And I wish I had time to tell you Irma's story, but I don't. But I'll tell you Mate's story. Mate says that even as he was growing up and as he was a young man, as he was into his soccer career, he was always reading the Bible. And he always had a sense of God calling him. He always had this sense that as he read the Bible, God was saying to him, Mate, this is not your life. This is not really your life. And so he was reading the Bible, he was praying for God to lead him, and he did that over the years. His sister had given him a Bible, and I can't remember if it was a Steps to Christ or Desire of Ages book. And he took those with him everywhere. When he traveled with the soccer team, when he was in his hotel room, he would read the Bible and he would read from the spirit of prophecy. He packed them with him everywhere he went, and he would always hear God's voice to his conscience. Mate, this is truth. Mate, this is the right way. Mate, this life that you're living now is not really your life. And he kept praying and asking God to lead him. When his sister read Leviticus 11 and learned about clean and unclean meats, she told her brother Mate, as a young man, a soccer player, and when he understood that that's what the Bible said, he started implementing that in his own life, and it was not easy. There's a big family gathering that happens in a rural village with all of their family relatives come together once a year. And every year there's lots of different food to eat, but the first year after they made that decision, you know what the menu was? A great big old hog being roasted and pork in everything. I mean, every dish, everything they had pork in it. And so he said, he didn't say anything. He just said to himself, I'm going to try to follow God. They just ate some bread or some salad, whatever, a couple of things didn't have pork in it. His family members noticed. They were not happy, especially his dad. What's going on? What are you doing? What is this? How come you're not eating? And he said, well, I want to take care of my body. I'm a professional soccer player. I think I can choose what's best to eat. Father was very angry. Eventually, he was very angry. Eventually, he said, you know what? You see I'm not eating. Why don't you offer me something else? So they had a verbal altercation. He ended up leaving the event and walking miles and miles and miles and miles home. But he took a stand for what he understood to be God's truth, even though he hadn't made a full commitment to God. The last year that he was playing soccer, halfway through the year, his neck started to hurt. He had a neck injury or something. And the team doctors, the trainers, he had other injuries. He told us about all these injuries. Soccer is brutal. Don't do it, man. Get your head ripped open. But he had this unexplainable neck injury. They didn't know what caused it. They didn't know how to fix it. They didn't know what to do for it. And every time he'd see the doctor said, I don't know what to do. You just have to rest. You can't play. You just need to rest. You just need to let it, whatever it is, heal. And you would think that would have upset him. But he actually found it kind of peaceful because he had time just to read the Bible and study. And that's what he did. And so he just rested. He read the Bible. He studied. He learned more and more. And at the end of the season, all of a sudden, with no explanation, his neck injury or his neck problem just vanished. Just one day it was gone. Went to the doctor. They didn't know what had happened. They didn't know why. It made no sense. The doctor said, you're good to go. You can continue your career. So here he is at the peak of his career. He's at the place where he can make a lot of money. He can increase the fame of his name. He's at a place where teams are interested in him and he can start negotiating. Here he is, and yet he's been reading the Bible. He's been listening to God's voice, and he realizes that he has to make a decision. He's 27 years old, got some good years of soccer ahead of him. But you know what he decided to do? He decided to retire in his prime because he wanted to follow God. And I think that's really what is cool. And he doesn't really watch or follow soccer now because he says, I'm much more interested in reading the Bible. When he decided to become an Adventist, he wanted his wife to study on her own and make a decision for herself. Even before they were married, he told her, I'm not your typical Georgian man. I do things my own way. He didn't want her just to make that decision because he made it. So she studied, and she decided that it was truth, and she wanted to follow it, and they were baptized together by the pastor you saw, Pastor Grisha. And in December, they will have been married 2 years. They have that little 1-year-old daughter, Sarah, cute little girl. When Mate and his wife Mary were baptized, Mom wasn't happy. It was like, oh no, there's another one. They're going to burn in hell because they've left the Orthodox Church. But she watched what happened in their lives, and she watched the change in their lives. And a few months later, she studied, and she also was baptized. So now you have the mother, and the son, and the daughter-in-law, and the daughter, who actually all live together and are all the family of God together. The father, actually Mate and Mary's wedding was delayed because he died right about when they were going to get married, but he died very angry, very much against Adventism. And the 3 other sisters, they're still praying for them. I don't have time to tell you the miracle of how God helped him stop smoking. You know, in Georgia, most of the men smoke. It's one of the highest smoking rates in the world. Most Georgian men die between 50 and 60. 65-year-old Georgian man is about it because they smoke themselves to death. It's not easy to be a man and not smoke in Georgia. But God did a miracle in Mate's life that I don't have time to tell you about. And you know, he was a new Seventh-day Adventist Christian. He was a delegate to the General Conference session. Can you imagine that? That's where he started learning English just a few months ago. And he's a personality that, you know, he'll start to have a translator and then he just can't stand it. And he just starts talking with whatever English he knows. He is passionate about finding a way for the Adventist church to have a little nicer church, a little more presentable, a little more inviting, a little more, hey, here, we're here. He is passionate about trying to figure out how God can use his gifts to be able to reach out to the people of his country, to Georgian men like himself, and encourage them not just to do this religion of ritual and formality, spend a few minutes, toss a couple of coins, and you're good to go. He's passionate about how God can use him to help share this truth with other people. And behind his story is a story of his sister that I won't tell you about, but it's equally amazing, maybe even more amazing, how God has led her. So as I thought about these stories, and I could tell you the stories about the other people in that picture, and tell you the story about Irina and her mom and how she came to know about the Adventist message. There's so many good stories. But anyways, I'll leave you with those stories. As I thought about these people that I met, and as I heard their inspiring stories, you know, it's encouraging, right? And it made me think of three things. So this is the wrap-up. This is the closing, okay? So hold on to that string, like they said. It makes me think of the fact that, following God is not always easy, and it sometimes requires a step. And the step that Mate's sister, the step that Irma took as a young lady, being kicked out of your home, that was a big step to follow Christ. But she was determined to follow Christ. The step that Mate took to set aside his career was a big step. But he wanted to follow Christ. He wanted to follow truth. And it's not always easy. It's not easy in Georgia to be a Seventh-day Adventist Christian. It's not easy to witness. And it reminds me that we need to make a step to follow God when he calls us. And also one of the things that struck me about Mate's story is, I think it's easy for me sometimes to conclude that people that are rich, famous, and successful in their careers probably don't have a lot of interest in God, that they're self-sufficient. And Mate's story reminds me that even though things might be going well in life, God is calling people's hearts, and we don't know. We don't know what's going on, the conversations, the thoughts, the prayers that are going on in a person's life. So it reminded me to not be too quick to think, that person wouldn't be interested in the gospel message because right now they've got it made. His story reminds me that God is reaching out to everyone, and I should be very careful assuming that someone isn't interested. And the third thing that the story of all of these families in the church remind me of is the importance of persevering prayer. How many of us have family members, have friends, have relatives that we've prayed for year after year after year. And it doesn't always turn out super nice. Their dad didn't come around and become an Adventist and be all happy about it. The three sisters haven't made that decision yet. But 12 years, that congregation joined that lady who stepped out and praying for that family. And probably the least one you would expect, the professional, successful soccer player, responded to that call. And the mother who was so hard against it responded to that call. And what an encouragement when you feel like, I don't know, I've been praying and there's no evidence that anything is happening. What an encouragement to keep praying, because we don't know. Only God knows what conversations are going on with the Holy Spirit. It was of encouragement to me. I hope it's of a little bit of encouragement to you. Maybe someday I can tell some of the other stories as well. As we hear one another's stories, we can be built up and encouraged to go forward in the work of God's kingdom.